Hi guys, welcome back to SuperSteel Gaming. This is Steelarrow with you here. So today I want to get into the Pacific campaign and what I've seen. So the first thing I want to say is I think we can all agree that as a whole, they did a great job. They put a lot of effort into it and they really tried to give us a good campaign. I do intend to come back most likely in the next video and delve into some of the things that they've fixed slash that they did good. I do want to give them a little bit more time to fix any bugs and initial problems. But what I want to do right now is I want to get into the big issues and talk about some of the things that I saw that I think are going to cause some problems for this campaign. And if you do like this video, guys, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and leave me a comment down below for more enlisted content. So let's go ahead and get into this thing. So guys, the first thing, the maps do not work. Like it or not, they don't. Now to clarify, I don't mean how they look graphically. I don't even mean how well they're made. The problem is that the way players interact, it just doesn't work right. You see, if you're the attacker, it's almost impossible. And there's many reasons for that. I'll get into that just in just a moment. If you're the defender, unless you're dealing with a very skilled group of players, it's not that difficult. It's kind of more of a laid back thing. So if you're playing allies, you're going to find that that's a lot harder. And if you're playing Japanese, it's going to be a lot easier, seeing that you have more situations where Japanese are going to be defending and less situations where the allies are going to be defending. So I have to say that my big problem, first of all, is that seeing that you only have a few maps, it's very easy to have repetition. So you're just kind of going over and over and over again, which is fine. I mean, it's new campaign, new technology, that's fine. The problem is when you are just over and over and over again losing. And if you're the allies, it's very difficult. So let me explain one thing, guys. One of the big things that's causing the problem is that you have these massive distances between capture points. So if you're spawning in, you're having to run all this way to get to the capture point, and the capture points are way easier to defend, and it's not easy to attack them. And so you only have a few soldiers actually getting to it at one time, and they can easily be mowed down. And then you lose 200-300 infantry, and then you finally break the capture point, and then you have another 100-150 meters to run to get to the next one. And that dovetails into our other issue, because then you have water, and water is a death trap. You get shot in it, it slows men down, it makes it a lot more difficult to get to the points. You have people hidden all over the rocks on one side shooting at the soldiers trying to swim across on the other. And though it may be realistic, I think it gives away fun for that somewhat realistic aspect. And so I think that's going to cause a massive issue. And it makes the campaign feel very unbalanced. It makes it very, very difficult for the attacker. It makes it very easy for the defender. And I just think it's an overall massive, massive problem. I don't exactly know how they could fix it on the maps they have now, unless they want to shorten some things. I think they should just design maps from now on that are a little bit easier to defend and attack, because I think we just get in a situation where you have the Americans grinding through their entire reinforcement pile to capture one point, and then they still have 2, 3, 4 left to go, and it's like they're just never going to be able to do it. And I just think that causes some issues, and I think a lot of people aren't liking it, and I think a lot of people would agree, like it's just very unbalanced. The attackers just are always going to have a much harder time. And then you get armor involved, and so you have got armor sitting up on the sides picking men off as they're trying to come. So like you're only gonna have 2 or 3 guys actually assaulting the point at one time at absolute best. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is I think the campaign is not balanced. And I think it's kind of interesting because it goes both ways. At first, the Japanese, I think, kind of have the supremacy because I think their weapons are a little bit easier to use, perhaps a little bit technologically better, but I think that's going to begin to rapidly change. As more American and Allied soldiers get the M1 carbines, M1 Garens, and if you want it, the M 1941, yeah, the M1 1941 Johnson. I think as those three weapons begin to really seep into the ranks of the Americans, I think it's going to begin to fall apart for the Japanese. And I think that kind of makes sense because, I mean, the American weapons just got better and better. The Japanese honestly don't have weapons that are really designed that can go up against the Americans. I mean, the Type High rifle may be okay, but you're going up against an M1 carbine with 15 rounds of ammunition, and as fast as I can pull the trigger, I can fire it. So a reload thing on the enemy side isn't going to help them a ton. The Garen's rival is just a bolt action. I'm not saying it wasn't a good bolt action, but it's a bolt action against a semi-automatic rifle. And then the Johnson is going up against the Type Otsu rifle, and that's probably the best rifle they have, but once again, it only has 5 rounds. So I think in that department, they're severely outgunned. Now, because of the size of the maps and because of the layout, bolt actions are still very, very important, but I do think that as Americans begin to fully be equipped with some of their better weapons, like Thompson's and even the Owen and their bolt action rifles, and for grenades, once they begin to get their white phosphorus grenades, I think the capability for Japan to really, really pose a credible threat, at least in infantry to infantry combat, is going to begin to shift away from them. And I think the other issue is just that if you have 5 guys with M1 carbines, it doesn't matter how good the bolt actions are on the other side. If the M1 carbine people are accurate, it's going to be very difficult for the Japanese on the other side to really pose a threat. And I just think that's going to begin to catch up with them. So I think right now in the early days, it's like more balanced and maybe slightly tipped toward the Japanese side. But I think as we go through the campaign and more players get up there, I think it's going to become a lot more difficult for the Japanese to really do much of anything on the infantry side. I do think you'll obviously have skilled players and people that can obviously wield a bolt action and can seriously do some damage. But I just think as a whole, and I have wondered if that is why, guys, that they actually decided to add the harder maps for the Americans because they knew we were going to have better weapons. I still think it's a little bit unfair. I always thought that maybe like, okay, if you're gonna do that, give us more reinforcements, like maybe 1,500 to 2,000, somewhere in there. Whatever would be the most realistic and still keep the game fun. But that can all be deceptive, and we honestly don't know how it would be if we had more. So we just have to see how that would work. But I think it's just going to become more and more difficult for the Japanese. Now, in armor, I don't think the Japanese are quite as under, you know, I mean, it's just not going to be too hard for them. I mean, we pretty much balance on the armor. They're not too outgunned and underpowered, but I do think in the air, it's going to be a little bit of a mix-up. I don't know. I don't know enough about how good the air is. The problem was the Japanese just began to run out of their good technology and by the end of the war, so we don't really know what would have happened if it would have just been a showdown between the two technologies. So I do think that still the air war is still up for debate and the armor is still up for debate. But I think the big thing is if we ever get the M2 carbine added, if we continue to use if we really use our better weapons and don't just stay with bolt actions, I just think the Japanese are going to have a hard time. There's obviously going to be battles, but I think that the Japanese just do not have the capability to pose a credible threat against guys who are basically all armed with M1 carbines and better. The only place I do think that the Japanese will be able to continue to reign supreme in is their close quarters, and I think that does give them some advantage because though all of our weapons can be used in close quarters, I think they do have some weapons that are a little bit more geared to close quarter combat, especially some of their later SMGs. So we'll see how it goes, but I just think it's going to begin to shift inside to the side of the Americans unless something changes. Also, guys, leave me a comment. I never could find anything on the Type 5 rifle, and I'm starting to wonder if they might have made that up. Several YouTubers couldn't find anything on it, and if you know anything about it, guys, absolutely give me a comment, because I totally want to know if that was real. I looked up a ton of things, but I just could not ever find it. I found the Type 4, but I never could find the Type 5. So guys, the final thing I want to talk about for this video is this is a thing that I think the Americans have a cheat on, and I'm sure all of you saw this coming, the BAR. The BAR, so early in the campaign, to me, is just a complete cheat. As much as I love it playing the Americans, I cannot imagine being on the Japanese side, which I will be doing very soon, guys. I was just trying to get a little bit to level 10 in that one. I'm going to go to level 10 in the Japanese, and then I'll decide how far I want to go from there. So my thing, guys, is this. The BAR is basically giving the Americans an assault rifle coming out the gate, and I know a lot of you are going to be like, well, you can only have it on a few guys, and you can only have it on your machine gun squad or one guy in your rifle squad, and I totally get it, guys. But my problem is if I have a BAR, I can get enough kills before I die that honestly it doesn't matter. And the thing to me, guys, is I think the BAR absolutely should be in here to offset some of the Japanese machine guns, but I think the MG should have been reserved into the teens. I think you shouldn't have started getting those until you get to the later teen of the campaign. And I think you should have had the best BAR up at the top, like where the Johnson is, because I just think the BAR is so overpowered and there's not many weapons that can go against it. And when you turn on semi-automatic mode, some people like automatic, some people like semi-automatic. I tend to vary, but if you turn on semi-automatic mode, you're basically just having another semi-automatic rifle to add to the Americans' mini. So I do think there is a little bit of unfairness with the BAR, especially that early in the campaign. Eventually it will balance out, obviously, but I still think it's a little bit unfair. So guys, that's what I want to talk about today. I will be doing another video talking about the goods. I will be most likely doing another video talking about some of the issues as more come out and things of that nature. And I will also be looking into some other aspects of the campaign. So guys, that's all for this video. I want to quickly say that this is one of the best campaigns Enlisted has ever made. It is a great campaign. It is a fun campaign. You should absolutely go play it. And I think once people begin to get settled in with their weapons, I think the unbalancedness of it may begin to fix itself a little bit, even though the technologies aren't even close to the same. I do want to also say, guys, that just because there are some issues does not mean we shouldn't play it. I think the thing is they put a lot of work in this campaign, and I definitely think it's worth playing. I think they still have some more things they can finish up, and I do think there's some more things they should absolutely add, such as naval strikes. But I do think this is a very good campaign, and with a few more things added, I think it could be probably the best campaign they've ever made. So anyway, guys, if you did like this video, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and give us a comment. I cannot wait to see you guys in the next one. See you on the battlefield, soldier. Steelarrow, signing out.